Hey, hello. So today we'll start our first lecture about the developmental biology. So my name is Dr. Mahmoud Khalil, and as well I'm the head of the department. Okay, so generally, if you had any concern concerning any course you are taking in the department, just let me know. Okay. So what about the developmental biology? So basically, you can study the basic principle of the embryonic and the post-embryonic development of animal, and you need to understand the underlying mechanism, either cellular or molecular mechanism. So there is specific topics for developmental biology. You deal with fertilization, how the cell migrate to establish the embryo, how the cells differentiate, and how the organs are formed, as well as how the limb can regenerate in some kinds of animals. You will understand how the cell fate is determined and how the body plan is established, beside how you understand how selected organs, of course, we will not deal with all the organs, how they are formed. And as well, one of the major contributors of the developmental biology is stem cells. And these stem cells retain the capacity of regeneration in humans. So as an introduction, so the developmental biology studies actually how the organism initiate and how the construction of that organism, rather than how these structures are maintained. So basically, it's the science that answers some questions that might you have in mind, like how does body form with its head always above its shoulder? Why is always the heart on the left side of our body? Why we have 5 fingers on each hand and not more or fewer? And why we can't regenerate limbs? As well, how do the sexes develop the different anatomies? Why can only female can be pregnant? So basically, there is a difference between a geneticist and a physiologist. Anyone who studies genetics only can ask how genes are transmitted from one generation to the next, while the physiologist asks about the function of the product of the genes, let's say the proteins in the body, what actually these proteins, either enzyme or a transporter or a carrier proteins, what are the function of the product of the genes. While for the developmental biologists, always ask a different kind of questions. So how a gene is expressed only in a certain type of a cell and not in the other type. You need to keep in mind that all our cells in our body have the same set of genes. It's the same DNA exists in all our cells, but there is a specific genes for in a certain type of cells are only expressed according to the cell type. As well, how this gene become active only at a specific time in development. And actually, there is a lot of work concerning this issue, and actually we don't know the full answer 100% for this question. So let's see here. It starts with the individual life. The individual can grow until reaching maturation. Once it reaches maturation, either male or female can go through a process of spermatogenesis or oogenesis. Soon after that, a process of fertilization leads to a formation of a zygote that go successive cell division, very fast successive cell division without the phase of the growth of these cells, leading to by a process called the cleavage, that lead ultimately to form to go into another phase, which is gastrulation. And the main aim of the gastrulation is the conversion of these embryo from a single cell layered embryo into double layered embryo. Soon after gastrulation, the process of the nervous system formation, which is a neurulation, followed by organogenesis, which is the formation of the organs. And soon after that, there is a cytodifferentiation. In other words, the cells start to differentiate to form a specific function. So you can see all the part of the diagram that is shaded with blue is the process of embryogenesis. with different perspective through the developmental time. In order to have a specific cell with a specific function in a specific organ, there is some restriction and there is some expression of a certain set of genes. So initially, the embryos start to do a restriction of a possible fate. Soon after that, there is expression of genes associated with these fates. Another further restriction of other fates or other possible fates with further expression of genes associated with these restricted fates, there is determination of a specific cell type. Upon expression of many genes associated with this specific cell type, it will lead to a functionally formed cell with a specific function. Shabab, any question concerning the last part?
No.
No, everything fine.
Okay. So let's see now, let's summarize what are the main two questions of a developmental biology, or the main two major objectives. Actually, development accomplish once you understand developmental biology, you can understand how these development generate cellular diversity and order within organism as well. And the aim of the development as well, the major aim or the main aim or the big picture, it ensures continuity of life from one generation to the next. So the two fundamental questions in developmental biology: how does the fertilized egg give rise to adult body? How does that adult body produce another body, which is the process of reproduction as well? So actually, these two large questions can be subdivided into other 7 general category of questions, starting with the question of differentiation. So as far as I said in the last previous slide, so how can you need to understand how the identical set of genetic instruction or genetic information in every cell, because every cell has the same genetic complement, can produce different types of cells. How these single cells, the fertilized egg, generate so many different cell types, and this is the question of differentiation. As well, the question of morphogenesis. So how can cells in our body are organized into functional complex structure, how tissues are formed, how organs are formed. While the question of growth, it's actually very crucial, because if there is any alteration in the growth of these cells, it will lead to a major cause of a major disease like cancer. So how do our cells know when to stop dividing? How this cell dividing or cell division is tightly regulated? Because if it's not tightly regulated, of course, a malfunction of the organ will arise, which eventually will lead to disease. As I said, one of the famous disease is cancer. So what about the question of reproduction? As you remember, we divided the two major questions of developmental biology into 7 other categories of question. So this is the 4th question of reproduction. So actually, how our sperms or ova are formed, and what are instruction in the nucleus and cytoplasm that help these 2 types of cells to form the next generation. As well as the question of regeneration. Some animals can retain the regeneration capacity and can regenerate part or entire body. But mammals are very poor at regeneration, and only we can account for stem cells that can form new structure. So we have stem cells all over our body, and of course, it is very obvious when you have a cut in your skin, the skin is regenerated to fill the gap that is formed by the cut. So how do the stem cells retain this capacity of regeneration? And of course, if these stem cells can retain the capacity, can we use it to cure diseases? It's a question of developmental biology as well. The question of evolution. So evolution, as well as you all know, involves some inherited changes in development. So how these changes in development can create a new body with new characteristics. The question of environmental integration. There is an accumulating evidence that there are a lot of cues from the environment can affect the development of the organism. These cues from the environment that surround the embryo can affect for example, you can see that some bacteria can live in fresh water, for example. If this fresh water is high in salt content, this is a kind of cue to these bacteria to try to develop a mechanism by its gene to cope with the high salinity of the fresh water. And this is one of the cues that can affect the behavior of the individual. So the general question of environmental integration, how is the development of an organism integrated into large context of its habitats? How this organism can cope with the changes in its habitat? Shabab, any question about the last slides?
No.
Okay. So let's see here. Initially, it was thought that developmental biology only deals with studies concerning the MD, doctors, physicians, and the cell and molecular biology, the biologists. So basically, these two experts, either a biologist or an MD, can work together to answer these questions, the 7 questions. But nowadays, modern science can promote the collaboration between different disciplines or different science based on the branch. And you can see that modern science is truly a huge collaborative work between all of these scientists to answer just the questions, and they are trying to do their best to answer most of the questions. So basically, you can see that a cell can start dividing. And when it is, for example, if another cell it's asking why you are dividing, you need to stop dividing. Actually, it's following the order of the genetic material. So it's important to know how to understand how the genetic instruction are being regulated in order to understand when the cell will start dividing and when it will stop dividing, and when it will be differentiated into specific set of cell type, like hepatocyte, like a kidney cell, like liver cell, like skin cells, whatever, fibroblast. So it needs to fully translate the instructions within its genetic material. So generally, you can see that even with a fly or the Drosophila fly and the human, both of these two distinct organisms, so from human and the fly, and fly from the from insects, plus insects, you can see that both of them have the same system. Either you can see that the figure is color coded. So both of them have a digestive system, both of them have a nervous system, body organization, and circulation. You can see that at least, although they are different in structure, but there is a basic pattern between these two different organisms. So let's have some sort of a quiz here. If you have like these 6 embryos, which of these embryos do you think it's the embryo of human? Can I hear your answers? Dalal?
I guess F.
Dalal?
Yes, it's F or no?
It's F. Dalal is saying F. What about Dina? Dina?
I think C.
C. What about Hala?
I guess F.
F.
بس هو ما يعني there's no indicator إنه في منهم واضحين منهم human بس في منهم عندهم يعني if we focus مثلا C في عندها texture بالراس فوق مبينة مش human ولا دي فالأف حتى الأف يمكن.
اوكي. F.
عنده tail.
الايه؟ اوكي. Let's go for Halima.
I think C.
C. What about Ibrahim?
F أو ولا واحد من
F أو ولا واحد. Okay. Let's go for Kinda.
I think F.
F. Let's go for Mariam.
I think C.
C. What about نظمية؟ صح كده نظمية اسمك؟
Yes.
اوكي نظمية.
البي لسه no, it's not obvious
Okay.
text له I think it's B.
It's B. اوكي. اوكي. So في حد ما قالش رأيه لسه؟ طيب خلينا نقول انتوا مش ملاحظين ان كلهم تقريبا اختلفوا حاجات بسيطة عن بعض؟
Yes.
Okay. What this imply to us? That development initially starts all embryos look alike. صح كده ولا لا؟
Yes.
Even this is a sci-fi. Even E, actually, it doesn't exist. It's some irony because it's the aliens. If you watch the movie, the aliens. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
يعني اللي عايز اقوله لما حتى بتوع السينما قرروا يعملوا امبريو لكائن جاي من الفضاء عملوه شبه الامبريوز بتاعتنا صح ولا لا؟
صح.
تمام؟ خلينا نشوف الاجابه الصح هتبقى ايه؟ الاجابه الصح هتبقى سي. اوكي؟ the correct answer is C. اوكي؟ تمام؟ وكونكم ان انتوا اتلخبطتوا ان انتوا بعضكم قال اف وبعضكم قال بي يبقى ده يثبت اهميه ان انت تدرس الديفلوبمنتال بيولوجي صح ولا انا غلطان؟ اوكي؟ واللي قالت تعال نشوف اللي بعد عن السي نقدر نقول اللي بعد عن السي وقال الاف ليه؟ نفهم شويه ليه؟ ها
they look كتير similar. بعدين ما بعرف يمكن أنا الصراحة ما اخترت السي لأنه مبين إنه في عنده legs يعني خلص خالصين مبينين يعني.
السي فيه فعلا قصد احنا ما بنقولش ليجز هنا بقى احنا بنبدا نقول ليمس. اوكي تمام
اوكي
تمام اللي انا عايز اقوله ايه هو ده الهدف من الديفلوبمنتال بيولوجي ان embryos to some extent starts look alike and soon after that it will start to differentiate into different structure based on the organism. Okay تمام you need to understand that A for instance is the embryo of birds طيور فهمت يا شباب ولا لا؟ اوكي
Yes.
B is the embryo of some sort of reptiles. اوكي فاللي انا عايز اقوله لكم هو ده الهدف من الديفلوبمنتال بيولوجي. We need to understand how at some point although the embryo look alike they start to differentiate and to form another organism with although similar with structure that is similar in function but the mode of its differentiation is different. فهمتوا الفكرة ولا لا؟
Yes.
اوكي في حد عنده اي سؤال على الجزء اللي فات؟ اوكي let's continue. So let's talk now about the lecture topics, what we are dealing with in the course of the developmental biology. Of course, we'll start with introduction. It's not this previous introduction. We'll introduce more the developmental biology. Then we'll go to the gametogenesis in mammals. Obviously, we'll not study the meiosis and mitosis. We'll study mechanism of fertilization as well, and the mechanism of gametogenesis. Then we'll go to the early invertebrates, some examples of early invertebrate development. Then we'll move to cell specification and how cells after that, how cells communicate and signal between each other. And then we'll understand how the axis is formed in Drosophila and amphibians as an example of animals. As well, we'll go through, after we understand these topics, we'll go through the understanding of how the early development of vertebrates. We'll see how the limb in a tetrapod is formed or regenerated, and then we'll look closer about the sex and germ cell determination, and then we'll deal not deeply, but we'll see some advantage in understanding how the evolution is linked to development, which we call it evo-devel. Of course, the major reference for this course will be one of the very famous and it's like the Bible of the developmental biology. It's a book called Developmental Biology by Gilbert. And the most interesting thing about this book, you will see the website of the book, and you'll see some videos as well if you go and look through this book. You will have some assignments through this course. These assignments actually to do a presentation about sex determination, and then you will have the presentation assignment 2 as well. You will do the early development in sea urchin, and sea urchin, one of the type of organism that is a sister for the sea stars. Okay. About the assessment, you will have midterm on week 8, and then the presentations of these assignments, presentation assignments, will be done starting from week 11 to week 14, while the final exam will be around week 15 or 16. And you can see the way of each assessment type. For the presentation, you need to follow of course, you have the assignments here for the presentations. I need to do the PowerPoint presentation for that topics, and you need to follow this template. So for the presentation template, you will always have the first slide that must contain a university, our BAU logo, the title of your talk, the course name and code, and you need to submit it to my name, and then you need to include in the first slide the student name and the ID. For the second slide, you state the major objective of the major and the minor objective. Actually, it is the title and the minor points in your part of the presentation. Then for the other slide, you need to stick for headings. It should be font 24, Arial bold, then followed by this instruction. Before the last slide, you need to state a conclusion for your part of presentation. And then, of course, the last slide will be the reference. And for all of you, the reference will be this book. Actually, this is the template that will have a weight in the mark of the presentation. شباب، في حد عنده أي سؤال عن الجزء اللي فات؟